Hello everyone and welcome to another very nice game from the Shenzhen Longgang Chess Masters Tournament 2024. Anish Giri with white faces Arjun Erigaisi, and in the previous video we've seen how masterfully Daniil Dubov disposed of Anish Giri, but now Anish has the white pieces and he's of course looking to strike back. So let's check out what happened here. Anish with the white pieces opens with pawn to d4. Now I also played a classical game today and I also played a classical game yesterday. I was able to win both of them, and well, I might show them to you, but now, well, there's stuff happening in the chess world. If there will be a moment where nothing will be happening, then I'm gonna show you some of my games. Okay, d4, knight f6, we have pawn to c4, e6 and knight to c3. We have bishop to b4, the Nimzo-Indian defense is on the board, and pawn to e3, the so-called normal line. We have castles, and now Anish plays bishop to d2. This is the fourth most popular continuation, bishop to d3. The so-called bishop attack is the top move, but bishop to d2, like I said, fourth most popular continuation. So maybe trying to check how well Arjun is versed in the secrets of the Nimzo-Indian. Pawn to d5, and now knight to f3 again. Top move a3 here. Bishop captures. We have bishop captures, and now pawn to b6. And of course, Anish is an incredibly strong player. He's currently world number 4 or world number 5, and he of course knows what he's doing. This is all very well prepared, but to my barbarian brain, this looks like the best possible version of the Nimzo-Indian you could have. You have the bishop to b7 that can't really be contested. There's no bishop on d3 or queen on c2 to fight for the e4 square. So if you want to put the bishop on b7, you have access to the e4 square. This just looks really awesome for black. But of course, Anish and Arjun are top class players, and they know that it's not that simple. Knight to f3, and now knight to e4, grabbing the space that Anish allowed him to grab. And now there are some games where rook to c1 was played, but here we have queen to c2, and it is now as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. Now, having the bishop on c3 is really awesome for white, and if the position opened up, this would be a very strong bishop. But for the moment, the knight on e4 is much stronger, so you don't really want to trade it for the bishop on c3. We have bishop to a6. Again, if you had to pick a move, probably you'd go for bishop to b7, but Arjun has something deadly here. Bishop to a6 puts pressure on the c4 pawn, and well, asking Anish, what do you play here? And b4 is definitely the way to go here, but Anish played bishop to d3, puts more pressure on e4, and now knight to d7. We have bishop captures on e4, d captures, and now as the c4 pawn is hanging, knight to d2, defending and attacking, and pawn to f5. So this is the position. Only a pair of bishops and a pair of knights have been traded off. All 8 pawns are still on the board for both white and black, and Anish castles queenside. So now he will, of course, look into some g4 ideas, maybe try to open up the g file and go after that black king if the g file can be opened. We have bishop back to b7 and pawn to f4. Saying that, okay, if you capture Alpasan, I get to open up the g file. Of course, Arjun not interested in that. He just goes knight to f6, improves his position. Rook h to g1. You could also slow play it with h3, g4, but you could also strike with g4 just to check if Arjun will move the knight, and then you maybe can get this d5 move in. So maybe you can sacrifice a pawn later on. You can challenge the knight with h3, and you will free up the entire position to attack the black king. But here Arjun goes b5. It's a very nasty move to face, and the question is, how do you attack it? It's something to make the attack happen just a little bit faster. And now what would happen if you go g4, let's say f captures on g4, you don't want to capture with a knight, like we said, then d5 will be very strong. But if f captures, there's h3, and if g captures, let's say rook g3, the other rook comes to g1, maybe there's a future d5. So it's definitely a possible way to play. Anish, however, played the d5 first, and after e captures on d5, now he played the g4. But turns out that this way of doing things seems to be better for Arjun. F captures on G4. Now C captures on B5, also looking very strange, taking away from the center. And now pawn to C5. Here, if you ask the engine what you should play, the engine says, yeah, go some like queen to E8, go after the pawn, and after the queen defends the pawn, play something like C6. But, you know, I'll leave that to our, silicon overlords. C5, a nice human move by Arjun, and putting pressure on Anish's center. And again, you can play knight to c4 here. It's possible as the d-pawn, of course, cannot move. And once a6 is played, you can play b6. Looks very, very strong. And after queen e7, now threatening to take the knight, you have knight a5. It put pressure on the bishop, and you have a passed pawn on b6 already. So not the worst. But Anish said, nope, I want none of that. He played b captures on c6 en passant. Bishop captures, and now, only now, knight to c4. We have rook to c8, and now knight to e5. So drastically improving the position of his knight. Look at this. The knight from d2 is now on e5, and this is now a monster knight. We have bishop back to d7 and king to b1. Of course, getting the king off of the c file. We have bishop to f5. It's not that you're worried that the knight will ever capture the bishop. It's just that you want your bishop on this diagonal. Of course, Anish is never trading this knight for the bishop. So queen to d2, unpinning from the rook on the c file, and queen to b6, putting the queen into the attack. And now there's a lot of pressure here. The e3 pawn is weak. The bishop is weak. If the queen ever moves, rook captures on c3 is an idea. So bishop to d4 definitely makes sense. Getting rid of both of those weaknesses. We have queen to b7, and now pawn to h3. A very, very aggressive move by Anish, giving up a pawn and allowing Arjun to create a pass pawn, a defended passed pawn on h3, just to open up the g file. So of course he takes, and rook to g5, puts pressure on the bishop. And now any move other than the move Arjun plays would be great for Anish. Like, you can't play bishop to g6, then I just captures, then you capture with the rook, you open up the g file completely. If you go bishop to e6, again, not that impressive. Rook d to g1 will be putting constant pressure here, but after knight to e8, the bishop is defended, and the g7 pawn is already beautifully guarded twice, so very hard for Anish to find a continuation here. He played rook d to g1, and now rook to c7. You can never defend g7 enough, because look at those rooks and the bishop. You absolutely have to have this defended 3 or more times. And now knight to g4. The idea behind knight to g4 is a fairly obvious one. Of course, he wants knight to h6 with check, and then to win the bishop on f5. So you can defend this with rook to c6 or queen to a6, the way Arjun does it. Now the h6 square is guarded by the queen. So queen to h2, Anish says, all right, there's really nothing happening on the queen side. I might as well win this pawn, and then we'll take it from there. And okay, Arjun goes bishop captures on g4. The knight is definitely a better piece here. Anish allowing him to trade the bishop for knight is probably what made Arjun's day here. Rook 5 captures on g4, and now knight to f6, putting pressure on the rook, and now rook 4 to g3. Again, just going after the h3 pawn, and here we have rook f to c8. And the question is, what do you play here? And now you could, of course, capture on h3, but if you capture on h3, then comes this very nasty rook to c1 check. And after rook captures, queen to d3 with check, and after king a2, rook captures on c1. But luckily, it's still possible to play after rook to g2. You are defending everything. There's just not enough time for Arjun to do anything here. If queen to c4 with check, doesn't matter. b3, and the second rank is very well defended. If you deliver a check, then even bishop to b2. And you are holding this, no problems. So instead, Anish tried pawn to f5. Okay, definitely makes sense. If the knight moves, you can even advance the pawn to f6. And now pawn to h5. The idea behind pawn to h5 is a very tricky one. And this is a very, very tricky position. Now, what Anish should play here is something like rook g5 or even rook g6 to prevent the knight from moving. Or maybe even rook captures on h3. Definitely what you shouldn't do is play queen captures on h3. Now, what's the real idea? Okay, let's play white makes some move, king a2, some slow move. The idea is that after knight g4 attacks the queen and queen captures on h3. Now do you see the problem in the position? I'm sure you do, but just in case you don't, feel free to pause the video, even though it's a hypothetical line, while I give you a couple of seconds. The move you're looking for is, of course, rook to c1. It's the only move that wins, but this is what Arjun had in mind. And the problem is now that after rook captures, even though it doesn't come with check, you have problems. Queen to c4 check is coming. And now rook to g2 is insufficient because there's queen to f1. And now the threat is, of course, rook to a1 with check. And after b3 is played, now rook to c2 check. And with the queen on f1, you just lose the game. Of course, the rook has to be captured, and then you blunder the queen on h3. So that's the whole point. Of course, Anish stopped this by playing queen captures on h3, but not really. The other moves that I mentioned, rook captures or rook to g5 or rook to g6 were the way to go, because now rook to c1 check still works. Even without the king being here, even with the check, it's still possible. Rook captures on c1, queen to d3 with check, king to a2, and the rook captures on c1. And now Arjun, like we said, cannot play rook to g2 as it's pretty much the same position, because now there's even queen to d1. And let's say pawn to b3, rook to c2 check. Okay, the queen is not on f1, but you don't care. After bishop to b2, there's d4, and there's just no surviving this position. E captures, rook captures on g2, queen captures e3. There's no defense. e2, e1 is coming. That's it. So here, rook captures on g7 was played, which is a fine resource for Anish to get out of this mess, and there are 3 possible moves here. Now, feel free to pause the video and try to find the only one that wins the game for Arjun while I give you a couple of seconds. You know, also, if you're wondering why there's more light, I have 5 lights around me, and usually I've only been using one. One behind me and one in front of me, and now just for fun I turned on the second one behind me, so there seems to be more light. I don't know, I like it. Maybe if it's too much, also comment on that. But yeah, rook captures on g7. So for those of you who were able to find it, congratulations, you are a true master of navigating incredibly difficult positions. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is king to f8. That's the only move that wins. And of course, we will show why. The problem is, if you take the rook, then comes queen to g3 with check. And the knight cannot move, of course. King to f8 or king to f7, then queen to g6 check. Queen to d6 with check, king g8, and now queen to e6 check. And next, of course, you take the knight with check. King to f8 has to be played, or if you play king to h7, then queen captures on f7. Sorry, not queen captures on f6. Queen to f7 with check, and now you get checkmated. Whatever you play, doesn't really matter. If you go here, then queen g6 is checkmate. If you go here, then bishop captures on f6 is checkmate. So that will not work after rook captures on g7. Going to h8 also doesn't work, but it's incredibly difficult to see why. The reason why this doesn't work is rook to b7. This is what probably Anish had in mind. And now all the same ideas no longer apply. Queen b1 check, king to b3. Look at this. Queen to d3 check, king to b4. Incredible, but white is surviving this. And after rook to c4 with check, you have king to a5, and there is nothing here. Nothing more you can do. If you try to go for some tricky stuff here, captures with check, then after king to b4, queen captures on b7 check, king to c3. Now you're just getting destroyed here. For example, king to g8, also queen to h4. White is just too strong here. Not much to be done. For example, king knight e8, queen g5 check, knight to g7, f6. Only one of the lines that wins, but all the lines are winning. Here the bishop is just much stronger than the knight. However, after rook captures on g7, Arjun played king to f8, and this is now the point of no return for Anish. The problem is, if you take the knight with bishop captures on f6, yes, you are up a piece, but you are getting checkmated with just a few moves, and after the bishop comes back, queen to b1 will be checkmate. So that's the problem. So Anish tried to trick him. Pawn to a4. Looks like a move, again, your uncle would play, but it's quite tricky. It's much trickier than it looks. point of it is that if queen to c4 check is played now, then there's b3, and if queen to c2 check, there's king a3, and there's no checkmate, and there's nothing. If rook b1 going after the pawn, just rook b7 defending the pawn, and white escapes. So after a4, there are a couple of moves you could play. Pawn to a5 is also a very nice one, but the only one that wins on the spot is queen to d1. Guard the b3 square and threaten rook to a1 checkmate. Every tempo is, worth everything here. b3 by Anish, trying to maybe somehow escape with the king, but now rook to c2 with check. We have king to a3, and here pawn to a5, and he was in this position on move 39, one move before reaching time control, that Anish Giri resigned the game, as there was nothing more to be done here. So tough loss, second loss in a row in classical chess for Anish Giri, something that happens like maybe every 5 years, if that. So, another very characteristic of him, but both Daniil Dubov and Arjun Erigaisi played an incredible game here, a very inspiring one, and it was enough to take down a player as strong as Anish Giri. So here you resign because there's nothing you can do. If you can't take the knight, what else are you playing? Because here just queen c1 check, you have to move the back with the bishop, and then queen captures his checkmate. Pawn to a5 is just preventing the king from reaching b4. And another thing, if you don't have bishop captures on f6, what are you playing? If rook g2 trying to defend, again, just queen c1 check, you don't really care about that rook, there's nothing here. Yeah, a5, Anish resigned, and a beautiful, beautiful victory for Arjun Erigaisi. And if you guys are interested about the standings, so we can even mention that, as I have no idea what the standings are. It's actually Yuan Yi who is leading with 2.5 out of 3, so 2 wins and 1 draw. Then followed with 2 points Daniil Dubov, Arjun Erigaisi, and Xiang Shibu, and then with 1 point Kun Ma, Vladislav Artemiev, Anish Giri, and with half a point Xiang Yushu. So there you have it. So yeah, beautiful stuff by Arjun. I was planning to show a game as I didn't know what was played, as I was playing a classical game myself. I wasn't following the happenings in the chess world, but all the games in the Prague Chess Masters ended in a draw. So I decided to go to Shenzhen Longgang Chess Masters tournament instead. Hope you guys agree. So yeah, once again, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Matthew Witten, Kristen is the best wife, Chris Karskadan, Don Chain YouTube, and Kerekesh Tibor for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, but mostly checking up on everything that's happening in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day and the rest of your weekend. See you soon.